Nathaniel Reed adjusted his glasses as he drove his silver Honda Accord through the dimly lit streets of downtown Chicago. The clock on the dashboard read 11:45 p.m., and the biting cold of 20 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 Celsius, seeped into the city despite the car's heating system. Snow began falling gently, adding to his fatigue after a grueling 5-hour budget meeting. As chairman of the City Council's Finance Committee, Nathaniel had spent the evening in heated debates over the police department's request for increased funding for military-grade equipment. He had argued passionately that the money would be better spent on community programs and officer training. The streets were eerily quiet. Nathaniel's thoughts drifted to his wife, Emily, likely waiting at home with a reheated dinner in the microwave. His house was only 15 minutes away, and the thought of sinking into his favorite armchair brought a small smile to his lips. The sudden flash of red and blue lights in his rearview mirror startled him. Confused, Nathaniel checked his speedometer. He was driving exactly at the speed limit. He signaled and pulled over under a streetlight, ensuring visibility. His father, a retired police officer, had taught him how to handle traffic stops properly. 2 officers approached, flashlights blinding him through the windows. The officer on the driver's side knocked sharply on the window. "License and registration," the officer demanded curtly. His nameplate read, "Officer Brady." Nathaniel's calm demeanor masked his confusion. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why I'm being stopped?" Nathaniel asked politely, retrieving his wallet. Brady's partner, Officer Thompson, rested a hand on his holster, a subtle yet chilling gesture. "Your taillight's out," Brady replied flatly. Nathaniel frowned. "I had my car serviced last week. Everything was working fine." "Step out of the vehicle," Brady ordered, his tone sharp and unyielding. Nathaniel hesitated, the freezing wind biting as he exited the car. Snowflakes landed on his suit jacket, quickly soaking through. "Hands where we can see them," Thompson barked, his flashlight tracking Nathaniel's every movement. The officer's body cameras were conspicuously off, a violation of department policy that sent a chill through Nathaniel. What began as a routine traffic stop was unraveling into something far more ominous. Nathaniel's heart pounded as he stood under the streetlight, feeling the weight of their authority pressing against his dignity. Brady circled Nathaniel like a predator, his boots crunching in the snow. "So you think you're above the law?" he sneered. Nathaniel remained still, his breath visible in the icy air. "No, officer," Nathaniel replied evenly, his corporate training in conflict resolution grounding him. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Brady's smirk widened. "Misunderstanding, huh? Drop and give me 20 push-ups, fancy boy." Nathaniel blinked, his disbelief evident. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Brady growled, his hand resting on his taser. Thompson chuckled, pulling out his phone to record. "Do it, or we'll have to search your car for anything illegal." The threat was clear. Nathaniel glanced at the wet pavement, snow and slush pooling in uneven patches. Slowly, he lowered himself to the ground, the freezing surface biting through his trousers. His palms stung as they pressed against the icy concrete. "Count them out loud," Brady ordered. 1, 2, 3. Nathaniel began, his voice steady despite the humiliation. Each push-up left his suit increasingly soaked and sullied. Residents in nearby apartments peered through their windows, recording the scene. Unbeknownst to the officers, Nathaniel's wallet slipped from his pocket. The leather unfolded to reveal his city council ID, its gold seal catching the streetlight. Thompson's mocking laughter faltered. "Brady," Thompson muttered, his tone shifting. He pointed his flashlight at the ID. Brady's eyes widened as he read the words aloud. "Nathaniel Reed, City Council Chairman, Police Oversight Committee." The power dynamic shifted instantly. Brady bent to help Nathaniel up. "Sir, we didn't realize." Nathaniel brushed snow from his suit, his composure unshaken. "Your reports on this incident are due in my office by 9 a.m., complete with the undeleted video from your phone, Officer Thompson." As he drove away, Nathaniel's hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the stark reality of what had just transpired. Tomorrow, he vowed, would mark the beginning of long overdue reform. The morning sun cast long shadows across City Hall as Nathaniel Reed arrived, his steps purposeful despite the lingering chill from the night before. Dressed in his sharpest navy suit, he carried a folder filled with evidence. Claire, his dedicated assistant, greeted him at the door, her expression grave. 17 complaints, unresolved, she began, handing him a thick stack of files. And the body camera reports? 12 malfunctions in 6 months. Her tone was clipped, frustration evident. It's a pattern, Nathaniel. Nathaniel nodded, his jaw tightening. We'll address it. At 9:30 a.m., the council chamber buzzed with energy. Citizens filled the gallery, their murmurs reflecting anger and anticipation. Journalists lined the back wall, cameras poised to capture every moment. At the center of it all, Nathaniel stood behind the podium, the weight of his responsibility heavy but welcome. Last night, he began, his voice steady, I experienced what many in this city have endured for years. The abuse of power is not just an individual failure, it's systemic. Today, we confront it. A large screen flickered to life behind him, displaying clear traffic camera footage of the previous night's incident. It was followed by grainy, shaky videos captured by bystanders, showing Nathaniel on the ground, humiliated and soaked, performing push-ups under duress. Gasps rippled through the room. Brady and Thompson sat near the front, their earlier bravado replaced by pale faces and nervous fidgeting. Their uniforms, once symbols of authority, now felt like burdens. Nathaniel continued, his tone unwavering. This isn't about me. It's about accountability. It's about every citizen who has felt powerless under the weight of unchecked authority. He presented the reform proposal. Mandatory body cameras with independent oversight, swift investigations into complaints, and comprehensive de-escalation training. As the council members read through the proposal, the room remained silent, the gravity of the moment sinking in. To those who serve with honor, Nathaniel said, his gaze sweeping the room, we support you. To those who abuse their power, your time is up. The council voted unanimously, a rare display of unity. The reforms were in motion. As Nathaniel left the chamber, he caught sight of a young boy in the audience, his eyes wide with admiration. It was a reminder of why this fight mattered, not for headlines, but for the future. The day marked the beginning of change, but for Nathaniel it was only the first step in a much longer journey. The council chamber buzzed with an intensity that matched Nathaniel Reed's determination. Rows of citizens filled the gallery, their eyes trained on the proceedings. Activists held placards reading "Justice for All" and "Reform Now," while journalists positioned their cameras, eager to capture every moment of what promised to be a historic reckoning. Nathaniel stood at the center of the room, his presence commanding. To his right, Chief Walters adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable under the weight of public scrutiny. Officers Brady and Thompson sat stiffly at the front, their uniforms pristine but their faces betraying unease. Last night's incident, Nathaniel began, his voice resonant with purpose, was not an isolated case. It is a symptom of a deeper systemic failure within our law enforcement. Today, we address it. He gestured toward the large screen behind him. The room hushed as video clips played. The traffic camera footage showing Nathaniel's compliance, followed by grainy recordings of the humiliating push-ups. The audible mockery from the officers sent ripples of anger through the crowd. Gasps and murmurs grew louder as the evidence unfolded. Nathaniel turned toward Officers Brady and Thompson. Officers, he addressed them directly. Your reports claim that I volunteered for a sobriety test. Yet these videos paint a different picture. Would you care to explain the discrepancy? Brady cleared his throat, his voice faltering. Sir, it was misjudgment on our part. A misjudgment? Nathaniel interjected, his tone icy. 17 unresolved complaints, 12 body camera malfunctions, and now, public humiliation of a citizen. Is that also a misjudgment? The officers looked to Chief Walters, but the chief remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. The council chamber erupted into whispers and indignant cries from the audience. Nathaniel raised his hand, calling for order. This is not just about 2 officers. It's about an institution that has failed its people. Effective immediately, we will implement reforms to ensure accountability and rebuild trust. He presented the reform bill, outlining mandatory body camera policies, independent investigations of complaints, and comprehensive community engagement training. To the honorable officers who serve with integrity, Nathaniel said, his voice softening, these reforms are for you too, to restore the dignity of your badge. As the council prepared to vote, Nathaniel caught sight of a woman in the audience, her hand clasped tightly around her son's. Her hopeful expression reminded him why this fight mattered. The vote was unanimous. As the reforms passed, the chamber erupted in applause, signaling the dawn of a new chapter for the city. Nathaniel exhaled deeply, knowing this was only the beginning. The cold light of the morning sun spilled across the city streets, reflecting the cautious optimism that now permeated the air. Nathaniel Reed sat at his desk, surrounded by stacks of paperwork, the buzz of activity outside his office, a sign of the changes set in motion. Calls poured in from activists, citizens, and even neighboring cities, each eager to understand the reforms passed the day before. Nathaniel's assistant, Claire, entered with a clipboard. "You've been invited to speak at the State Reform Summit next month," she said, a smile breaking through her usual professional demeanor. "And there's someone waiting to see you. They say it's important." Nathaniel looked up, curious. "Send them in." The door opened to reveal a woman with tear-filled eyes clutching a young boy's hand. Nathaniel recognized her from the council meeting the previous day. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mr. Reed, I had to thank you, in person. My son, he's only 10, but last year an officer mistreated him over a misunderstanding. He's been scared of the police ever since. Yesterday, when he saw what you did, he said, maybe they'll be fair now. Thank you for giving him hope." Nathaniel rose, shaking her hand warmly. "This is why we do it," he replied, his voice steady. "Not just for today, but for their future." As the day unfolded, signs of change began surfacing across the city. A new training module, focusing on de-escalation and community engagement, was introduced at the police academy. Complaints filed against officers were now routed directly to an independent oversight committee, staffed by civilians and retired officers with unblemished records. The changes were swift but carefully structured to address both the symptoms and the root causes of systemic failures. That afternoon, Nathaniel attended a community town hall at a neighborhood center. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Citizens voiced their concerns, and officers who had volunteered to be part of the new reform initiative listened attentively. It was the first time in years that both sides shared a space without hostility dominating the room. Toward the end of the meeting, a young officer stood and spoke. "We want to rebuild trust," he said, his voice earnest. "We're here to serve, not to intimidate, and I'm ready to prove that with my actions." Applause filled the room. Nathaniel observed the scene, a sense of cautious optimism settling in his chest. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, entrenched resistance, missteps, and moments of doubt. But for the first time, he believed the city was ready to rise above its divisions. As the town hall concluded, Nathaniel stepped outside into the cool evening air. The weight of the past days lingered, but he felt lighter. Change was no longer a distant hope. It had become a tangible reality, rippling through the city with every conversation, every reform, and every small act of accountability. Nathaniel gazed at the skyline, his resolve firm. The work was far from over, but, For the first time, he felt the city truly moving forward, one step closer to justice for all. 6 months had passed since that bitterly cold night when Nathaniel Reed was forced to do push-ups in the snow. The city had undergone a transformation that few had thought possible. Standing at the podium of the police academy's grand hall, Nathaniel looked out at the graduating class of new officers. 50 men and women, representing the diversity of the city, sat in crisp uniforms, their eyes reflecting determination and purpose. Behind them, proud families filled the audience, and among them sat Nathaniel's father, retired Captain Samuel Reed. The elder Reed had played a pivotal role in designing the new training curriculum, his decades of experience a guiding force in shaping what policing should become. Today, Nathaniel began, his voice clear and steady, marks not just the graduation of officers, but the beginning of a new chapter for our city. 6 months ago, I stood on a patch of frozen ground, humbled by the abuse of power. But today, I stand before you, proud to see what we've accomplished together. The audience listened intently as Nathaniel recounted the journey. The police department, once fractured by mistrust, had embraced reforms that prioritized accountability, respect, and community service. The new training program required every recruit to complete hours of service in shelters, schools, and community centers before earning their badge. Body cameras had become mandatory, with daily checks to ensure compliance, and a civilian oversight board now reviewed all complaints with transparency. Nathaniel gestured toward the new recruits. You are not just officers. You are the bridge between the law and the people. Your badge is not a symbol of authority, it's a symbol of trust. He paused, letting his words sink in. And to the citizens here today, I promise you this: the reforms do not stop here. We will continue to listen, to adapt, and to grow together. As he concluded, the room erupted in applause. Families cheered, recruits stood straighter, and even seasoned officers nodded in agreement. In the front row, Nathaniel caught sight of Officers Brady and Thompson, no longer in uniform, but present nonetheless. After their resignations, they had chosen to stay involved, working within the community to repair the damage they had caused. Their presence was a testament to the possibility of redemption. After the ceremony, Nathaniel walked outside into the warm summer air. The spot where he had been humiliated 6 months ago now housed a community policing center. Its bright windows glowed with activity as officers and residents worked together to plan neighborhood events. Nathaniel smiled as he saw a young officer helping a child learn to ride a bicycle outside the center, his badge gleaming in the sunlight. It was a small moment, but one that spoke volumes. The road ahead would not be easy. Resistance would still emerge, mistakes would be made, and challenges would test the system. But for the first time in years, Nathaniel felt the city's heartbeat stronger. Its people united in a shared vision of justice and dignity. As he turned to leave, his father approached and clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You've done good, son," the elder Reed said, his voice filled with pride. "But remember, this is just the beginning." Nathaniel nodded, his resolve unwavering. "I know, Dad. We'll keep building, one step at a time." Together, they walked toward the horizon, the promise of a brighter, fairer future ahead. The echoes of that fateful winter night had not faded, but they had transformed into lessons, into action, and finally, into hope. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our latest videos. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Thank you all for taking the time to watch, and see you in the next video.